or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by USA Today. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles from USA Today for Tuesday, May 19th of 2026. Your reader today is Alan Blackburn. Mangione evidence is tossed by the New York judge. A New York judge on May 18th partially granted a request to toss some evidence obtained after law enforcement located Luigi Mangione in the wake of the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, but allowed other key evidence to be used at the trial. Mangione was found at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, days after a 5-day manhunt. Authorities said he fatally shot Thompson outside a Midtown Manhattan hotel in New York City on December 4th of 2024. He was arrested and charged with 9 felony counts, including second-degree murder, in New York State Court. Mangione faces separate charges in Pennsylvania and in federal court. During a 9-day hearing in December of 2025, Mangione's attorneys battled prosecutors in New York State Court over whether evidence police found in his backpack at the time, including a notebook, a silencer, and a 3D printed handgun, and statements he later made to law enforcement should be presented at trial. Mangione's attorneys argued that the police searched the backpack multiple times before obtaining a warrant, and therefore it should be excluded. The defense also asked the court to toss out statements Mangione made to police, arguing that he was interrogated before being read his Miranda rights and after he invoked them. Prosecutors, meanwhile, argued that the searches were legal and complied with local police procedure. They also said a subsequently obtained search warrant provides an independent basis to admit the evidence. Acting New York Supreme Court Justice Gregory Caro ruled that some statements made by Mangione while in custody at McDonald's and evidence found during the initial search of his backpack must be suppressed, including a cell phone, his passport, and a wallet. But Caro ruled that a subsequent search of the backpack at the police station, which uncovered a gun and a red notebook, was valid. Caro determined some statements Mangione made to police and correctional officers that were challenged by the defense would also be admissible. Prosecutors say the notebook contains diary entries written by Mangione that shed light on his decision to target the executive. The entries were made public on June 4th in a filing by Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which was submitted in response to a motion by Mangione's defense team seeking to stay or dismiss the New York State case against him. I finally feel confident about what I will do. The details are coming together, Mangione said in his notebook. I don't feel any doubt about whether it's right or justified. He wrote that on August 15, 2024. He said, I'm glad in a way that I procrastinated because it allowed me to learn more about United Healthcare. He describes United Healthcare as a company that literally extracts human life force for money. The target is insurance. It checks every box. Despite the mixed ruling, the notebook and the weapon will be very important pieces of evidence for the prosecution's case. Would it be stronger if it was some of the evidence that was suppressed, he said, of the case against Mangione? Sure, but they're not left with nothing. Cheryl Bader, a professor of law at Fordham University, echoed that sentiment, saying that while the decision is a partial victory for Mangione's defense, it won't derail the prosecution's case. Other purported evidence against Mangione includes items found near the crime scene that authorities say contained his DNA, including a cell phone and a water bottle. It doesn't mean the case can't go forward, right? They also have DNA evidence and surveillance photos. Mangione's attorneys in the federal case against him also argued that prosecutors should be barred from using evidence found in the backpack because police illegally searched it without a warrant. But U.S. District Judge Garnett denied Mangione's motion, finding the entire contents of the backpack fall squarely within several exceptions to the warrant requirement. Can Trump's influence help decide key primary races? Senate, House, and gubernatorial primaries in 6 states will test the power of President Donald Trump's endorsements on today. Voters in Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Pennsylvania, and Idaho, and Oregon will determine the nominees for a November general election as the Trump administration is mired in war with Iran, high inflation, a congressional redistricting battle, and the president's low job approval rating. Meanwhile, Trump is hoping to extend what his critics call a revenge tour in the primaries after beating 5 out of 7 state Senate incumbents. He targeted in Indiana on May 5th and was endorsed candidate and defeated incumbent Senator Bill Cassidy in Louisiana on May 16th. Kyle Kondik described the May 19 races in which Trump has chosen sides as his next big test after he wins in Indiana and he tries to fight off his lame duck status. Can Maverick Massey overcome Trump to prevail in Kentucky? Among the most high-profile primary races today is Kentucky's 4th district between Republican Thomas Massey and a Trump-endorsed GOP challenger, farmer and former Navy SEAL Ed Galrine. Massey is facing the toughest election of his seven-term career, as this primary will be a major loyalty test for voters and could be a barometer of the president's MAGA movement. Massey led the congressional effort that forced the Department of Justice to release documents about sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The libertarian lawmaker also voted against Trump's tax cut legislation last year and supported a resolution to halt Trump's war on Iran that failed. In response, Trump has trashed Massey, including a memorable March campaign to stop in the legislator's Northern Kentucky district. The president described Massey as the worst person in a total disaster, since he commands the loyalty of GOP lawmakers who hold slim majorities in the House and Senate. We've got to get rid of him, he said, depicting Massey. He's disloyal to the Republican Party. He's disloyal to Kentucky, and most important, he's disloyal to the United States of America. He's got to be voted out of his office as soon as possible. Massey has his fair share of loyal supporters, but a new Quantas Insights poll showed Galrine is a slight 48% to 43% advantage over Massey among likely voters. Massey's never faced this serious a challenge until now, said Irvin Covey, House of Representatives editor for the Cook-Pollock Report. While Trump is still popular among Republican voters, and we've seen that in primaries over the last 10 years, taking out an incumbent is always a difficult task. Massey told WLTV, told the TV station on May 14th, that split between him and Trump doesn't mean voters shouldn't back him. 90% of the time I vote the way the president and the party have wanted me to vote, Massey said. 10% of the time I'm sorry if they're bankrupting the country. If they're spying on Americans without a warrant, that's where I have to deviate from the party. Pennsylvania's congressional rate could determine control of the House. Meanwhile, many will be watching the competitive 7th congressional district, as the winner could determine who controls the U.S. House next year. The May 19th primary has 4 Democratic candidates locked in a heated race in Lehigh Valley to see who will go up against the Trump-backed incumbent Republican Representative Ryan McKenzie, who is running unopposed, and his district is considered a swing seat by the Cook-Pollock Report. If vulnerability comes as McKenzie flipped the district red 2 years ago, ousting Democratic U.S. Representative Susan Wild by only 1%, and won the closest congressional district contest nationwide. Democratic hopefuls looking to take back the district, including Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee endorsed Bob Brooks, a firefighters union leader, and Ryan Crosswell, a former federal prosecutor, are reportedly neck and neck in fundraising, and they're also outpacing their fellow candidates. Meanwhile, McKenzie has raised nearly $4 million. However, the district which voted for Trump and for president by 3 percentage points in 2024 is ripe for flipping. McKenzie is quite vulnerable this year. Democrats have a competitive primary, and most of the National Party establishment is behind Bob Brooks. But Republicans appear to be trying to boost Lamont McClure, who would be a weaker candidate in the general election. Rugby player overcomes setback and barriers. Despite not having a colon, the star aims for the Olympics. When Cassidy Bargell took the field for Team USA at the 2025 Women's Rugby World Cup, she joined scores of elite athletes who fought to achieve their dream of competing on an international stage. Evidence of Bargell's biggest battle, however, was hidden under her jersey. Bargell has played with an ostomy bag since 2021, when she was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease called secure acute ulcerative colitis. The bag collects and stores waste from a point or stoma in Bargell's abdomen, where her colon was surgically removed. Bargell, an NCAA Division I college rugby player at the time, underwent 4 major abdominal surgeries in the span of a year while simultaneously recovering from an ACL tear. That type of setback can derail an athletic career. But Bargell continues to ascend the U.S. rugby ranks. She's now intent on making her first Olympic roster for the 2028 Los Angeles Games. Every time I get to train with these athletes and with my team and play, it's a reminder of how much I love playing, how much I love training, how grateful I am for my body and the ability to do it. How sick could I be? I was still training for rugby. While she was still in college at Harvard, Bargeld began to experience minor bowel disease flare-ups, but she never saw a doctor because the symptoms always seemed to go away until they became too big to ignore. She suffered severe abdominal pain, lost weight, and was unable to eat or sleep through the night without waking up in a drenched in sweat. She constantly needed to use the bathroom and passed a lot of blood when she did. I knew I was sick, but how sick was I? I was still training for rugby. Finally, in November 2021, she was rushed to the hospital and had surgery to remove her colon and create a stoma. A few months later, she was back on the pitch for Harvard. But Bargeld needed another abdominal surgery in June 22. Then in October 22, she tore her ACL while playing rugby. In November 2022, she had 2 more emergency abdominal surgeries. I vividly remember the first tackle I ever made when I had a bag and how scary that was. I'm pretty sure my teammate just fell over for me. Like, I don't actually make a tackle her. But yeah, there was a lot of fear and it took a lot of courage, but I don't think I ever thought I couldn't play again. Bargeld played for her junior national teams when she was younger and always wanted to compete for the senior national team. But after her various abdominal surgeries and knee injury, she no longer expected that to happen. So when the USA Rugby gave her another shot at her dream, she jumped at the chance. Bargeld hadn't played rugby for almost a year when she was invited to a domestic national team camp in January of 2024. She performed so well that she was invited on a tour and debuted for the senior national team in March. Bargeld credits her former USA 15's head coach, Sion Fukufuka, who now coaches the Scottish national team, for supporting her in her ostomy. He didn't see it as something that took away from me. He saw it as something that added to who I was as a person. Bargeld started playing rugby when she was 13 in her hometown of Silverthorne, Colorado, a girls' rugby hotbed. She wanted to play 4 years at Harvard, where she won the National 15s championship as a sophomore and co-captained the team as a senior. USA Sevens head coach Emily Bidwell, who has coached Bargeld for more than a decade, said the defining traits of a great rugby player are a tremendous work ethic and a willingness to persevere through adversity. She's an absolute workhorse, Bidwell said. Her ability to contribute on both sides of the ball, maintain tempo, and successful in both 7s and 15s. She's a powerful athlete with a highly developed skill set, and that combination makes her a dynamic ball carrier who connects really effectively with the players around her. She's also a true student of the game, a smart, thoughtful player who is constantly looking to tactically evolve, not just to have an individual impact, but to play her role in a way that maximizes the performance of the team. Bargeld plays scrum half, one of multiple playmaking positions in rugby. The scrum half acts as a link between the forwards and backs and is the team's key decision maker. The position comes naturally to a cerebral person like Bargeld, who described herself as a very type A. I love the thinking part of the game, the tactical part of the game. I love passing. I love being a 9. I say it all the time. When it came to dealing with her diagnosis, though, Bargeld wasn't in control. Ulcerative colitis was never part of her life plan, but it forced her to adjust her life expectations and accept that progress isn't always linear. I think it gave me a lot of resilience, just knowing that everything is going to work out for me. Even if it's not exactly how I envisioned it the first time, it's still something that can help me on the field, something that I'm really trying to bring to my game. Is just the anti-fragile mindset of any failure or setback is going to make me stronger and better and more prepared for the next time or the next moment. Her next goal is the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Bargeld is one of a handful of U.S. athletes who compete for both 7s and 15s teams, and she could have a busy summer ahead. The 7s team will next compete in 2 world championships in Valladolid, Spain, in late May, and in Bordeaux, France in early June. The 15 teams will travel to South Africa for 2 games in July. Those are just the first steps on a path to qualify for the 2028 Olympics, where the USA women's 7s teams will follow up its bronze medal winning performance at the Paris Games. The last Olympics made U.S. women's rugby star Ilona Maher a household name and increased American exposure to the sport. But Bargeld says there's now pressure to continue that momentum. We sort of have a responsibility now to continue to push American rugby forward and show what that means to the country and to the world. We all know how much rugby has given to us in our lives and how in high-performance sport performance matters. And that's bringing rugby to America and rugby to other girls like us in our communities, and much that can give back to other people. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. Trump warns Iran that the clock is ticking. Talks stall as Israel and Hezbollah attacks go on. Oil prices rose on May 18th as President Trump warned Iran that the clock is ticking following a drone strike on a nuclear plant in the United Arab Emirates, raising fears of renewed conflict as talks between Washington and Tehran stall. U.S. and Iranian officials rejected each other's negotiating positions on May 16th. In a Truth Social post the following day, Trump threatened Iran to get moving or face consequences. He said, for Iran, the clock is ticking. They better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai said, Tehran won't be intimidated by threats, adding the country's right to enrich uranium is non-negotiable. Trump says he won't sign off on a deal that doesn't include assurances from Iran to end its nuclear weapons program. Baqai, speaking May 18th at a news conference, said that Iran's nuclear enrichment rights are protected by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, insisting that it's not something Iran will negotiate or compromise over. There's no need for another party to recognize this right for Iran. This right already exists, he said, according to translations from Al Jazeera and the International Business Times. Trump is expected to meet top national security advisors today to discuss options for resuming military action. Baqai said Tehran was prepared for all scenarios. As for their threats, rest assured that we are fully aware of how to respond appropriately to even the smallest mistake from the opposing side. Emirati officials said a drone hit an electrical generator outside the Barakeh nuclear power plant in a perimeter on May 17th. No injuries were reported, and regulators confirmed the facility remains safe. Officials said they were investigating the source of the drone and noted the United Arab Emirates had a full right to respond to such terrorist attacks. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif condemned the attack and called for all countries to exercise maximum restraint. Dialogue and diplomacy remain the only viable path toward lasting regional peace, stability, and de-escalation, said Sharif, whose country has played a central role in negotiations between Washington and Tehran since the start of the war in February. Last week's talks between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping ended without an indication from the world's top oil importer that would help resolve the conflict. Brent crude futures, the international benchmark, traded around $108 a barrel early May 18th, still much higher than before the Iran war began, but down about 1% from the weekend highs. U.S. gas prices remained elevated at $4.51 a gallon. House Speaker Mike Johnson, in an interview on May 17th, said gas prices are too high as a result of the stalled traffic along the Strait of Hormuz. Johnson said Republicans are anxious for the critical waterway to reopen and oil prices to come down, especially as the midterm elections approach. His comments come as polls showed Americans are increasingly frustrated with the Trump administration's handling of the economy in the Iran war, which has surged energy prices in the United States and abroad. All points lead back to that, Johnson told Fox News, speaking about the waterway, the Gulf of Hormuz. Gas prices are too high because of that, and it has an effect on how goods are transported to the grocery store and all the rest. As soon as we get that straightened out, we'll get back to the kitchen table issues, he said, adding we're really excited and anxious for that to be resolved. In a poll released on May 17th, 59% of Americans said that gas prices were a financial hardship, and 26% said they are an inconvenience. Americans are unclear about Hormuz in another poll. Meanwhile, nearly 70% of Americans say they're not getting a clear understanding of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. The WHO, World Health Organization, declares Ebola a health emergency. The World Health Organization declared a public emergency of international concern over an outbreak of a rare Ebola virus in Central Africa. On May 17th, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus announced the outbreak of the Bundibugyo virus, a species of Ebola that has killed at least 80 people, and nearly 250 suspected cases in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as of May 16th. In neighboring Uganda, officials says laboratory results confirmed 2 cases in the capital of Kampala, including 1 death among people traveling from the Congo with no apparent link to each other. Another laboratory-confirmed case was also reported in Kinshasa, Congo's capital, infecting someone returning from the eastern Congo province of Ituri where the outbreak is centered. The WHO said the spread doesn't yet meet pandemic levels under international health regulations. The risk to Americans is low at this time. The outbreak speaks to growing concerns among critics of Trump's administration's around more limited global public health efforts. The United States, which withdrew from WHO under President Donald Trump, previously played a key role in surveilling emerging outbreaks. This is a serious and potentially devastating Ebola outbreak. Dr. Tom Frieden, former director of U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, during a major 2014 outbreak, said in an email response. Frieden said that by the time the health workers detected this latest outbreak, cases could have outnumbered those reported at the start of the 2014 outbreak. In West Africa, which caused more than 28,000 cases, caused more than 11,325 deaths over 2 years. Current insecurity in Congo, which faces civil unrest and armed conflict, makes control measures difficult. The world again faces grave risk and needs an urgent response, Frieden said, alleging the United States' withdrawal from the WHO and other Trump administration actions have been reckless. The Department of Health and Human Services did not immediately respond to USA's today's request for comment. The CDC has warned people traveling in the area should practice enhanced precautions. The WHO said neighboring countries sharing line borders are considered at high risk for further spread because of travel and trade. Ebola spreads through bodily fluids from an infected person or contaminated objects. And animals can spread it to people. In a news conference on May 17th, the CDC said it has activated its emergency response center. The agency said it's also coordinated with interagency partners and provided in-country support for surveillance and contact tracing, among other prevention measures. Individuals are at risk of transmitting the virus when they're in contact with someone who is symptomatic. Identifying those infected and ensuring quarantine or isolation measures are taken to provide supportive care are the most critical public health interventions right now. But the risk to American people is low. The High Court won't hear a social media case. Liability protections for platforms are at issue. The Supreme Court on May 18th passed up a chance to review liability protections for social media sites, declining to take a case about whether X Corporation can be sued over the distribution of sexually explicit videos of minors. The controversial law at the center of the case, known as Section 230, has been widely interpreted as shielding websites from lawsuits for user-generated content. Critics say that lower courts have read too much protection for internet platforms into the words of the law. Social media platforms have increasingly used Section 230 as a get-out-of-jail-free card, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote in 2024 when he disagreed with the court's decision not to take a case about Snapchat. The latest rejected appeal concerned teenage boys who thought they were interacting on Snapchat with a girl at their school. In reality, they say they were being tricked by sex traffickers who blackmailed them into recording sexually graphic videos of themselves. 3 years later, the videos began circulating on Twitter, which was now named X. The company rejected requests by the minors to remove the posts, doing so only after the Department for Homeland Security got involved, according to filings. When the teenagers sued, the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said Section 230 barred them from going after X for distributing child pornography or for benefiting from sex trafficking. The court did allow other aspects of the lawsuit to move forward, but the victims identified in the lawsuit by pseudonyms asked the Supreme Court to review the dismissed claims. What makes this case different from others is that Twitter knew that criminal content involving John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 was proliferating on its platform, their lawyers wrote. This case does not require the court to exhaust all instances in which Section 230 applies. In response, the lawyers for X called the suit the latest attempt to disrupt a settled interpretation of the law. Like others who have raised variations on the same arguments, they said, the petitioners do not come close to justifying that destabilizing step. Go back to page 3 here. Then the crew ejects safely after jets crash at an air show. A mid-air collision mars Idaho demonstration. An air show at Mountain Home Air Force Base in southwestern Idaho was canceled on May 17th after 2 Navy jets collided mid-air and crashed during a demonstration, forcing 4 crew members to eject safely from their aircraft. The base confirmed to USA Today that 2 U.S. Navy EA-18G Growlers assigned to Electronic Attack Squadron 129 from Whidbey Island, Washington, collided midair while performing an aerial demonstration at the air show. The crash occurred about 12:10 p.m. local time and involved 4 crew members. There's a picture of them here going down in red smoke. All 4 of the air crew successfully ejected, and they're being evaluated by medical personnel. First responders are on the scene, the base said in a statement, adding that the incident remains under investigation. The incident took place on the second day of the Gunfighter Skies Air Show, a free public event that featured the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, according to the base. The crash happened about 2 miles northwest of the Mountain Home Air Force Base. The Idaho Statesman reported that the rescue crews responded to a mid-air collision involving a performance involving 2 E/A-18G Vikings Growlers, demo team aircraft at the air show. During the event, an air show announcer told the crowd that all 4 Navy pilots were found safe, according to the newspaper. We had 4 good parachutes, the air announcer said. The crews were able to eject, and they're located one mile south of where the smoke is. The parachutes came down. At about 1:18 p.m. local time, Mountain Home Police Department said the event had officially been canceled for the remainder of the day. Police advised the public not to travel to or attempt to access the base as a spectator, as the event no longer would be taking place. In an update shortly before 3 p.m. local time, the Mountain Home Air Force Base said the incident scene had been secured, and event attendees were now allowed to exit the base. The base had previously asked attendees at the base to remain in the area to allow first responders to secure the scene. Photos and videos shared on social media show the 2 fighter jets colliding midair before spinning and crashing to the ground, causing a fiery explosion and large plumes of black smoke to billow into the sky. Photos and videos showed 4 parachutes opening in the sky after the crash occurred. The incident occurred amid a wind advisory for portions of southwest Ohio and northeast, according to the National Weather Service. The Weather Service reported good visibility with wind gusts up to 29 miles an hour at the time of the crash. Areas of blowing dust reduced visibility will create additional hazards, the Weather Service said in its advisory. Winds this strong can make driving difficult, especially for high-profile vehicles. Use extra caution. The Idaho statement reported that no parachute performers were scheduled for May 17th due to wind conditions. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:29. And we're going on to the money section. I'll turn the page here. Cashing in on history. T-shirts, baseball caps, cutting boards, and more. Companies are leaning into America's 250th anniversary with a variety of merchandise. The array of 250 branded products cropping up in stores around the United States is defined by the intertwining of 2 themes: American nostalgia and quintessential style. That's according to Lauren Downing Peters, Associate Professor of Fashion Studies at Columbia College in Chicago, who says these clothes, decorations, and products hearken to a previous time rather than look forward, showing how America's birthday can be a unifying force in divided moments. Fashion, and by extension merchandise, is a common ground where we all can celebrate this one shared aspect of our identity and experience as Americans. Celebrating the American uniform. This isn't the first time American Milestones have produced merchandise, said Peters, who's the author of Redressing American Fashion, a book about the clothes that define American history. In 1979, a logo to mark America's bicentennial was popularized and is now considered an icon of retro U.S. aesthetics, he says. You can find tees of the logo in many second-hand shops. It's become an emblem at that point in history. The rise of merchandise in 2026 has some similarities with celebrity products in that past era. There's a political parallel between 1976 and 2026 in terms of American interests abroad, polarizing politics, and amidst all of that, in both years, the birthday of America is a common ground. In 2026, the memorabilia showcases the American 250 logo, which features red, white, and blue lines intersecting to form the triple-digit landmark number. And here's a picture of a T-shirt with you got to look close to realize it says 250. It's rather abstract in its form. Patriotic logos and colors on T-shirts and baseball hats are quintessentially American, Peter said. You probably won't find many other countries selling this kind of product. It's not coincidental that the types of objects these logos are on T-shirts, baseball caps, two elements of the American uniform. The broader symbolism is aligned with how we dress as Americans. T-shirts and baseball caps are tried and true symbols of America's independent and individualistic nature. Lauren DeVita, Associate Professor of Apparel Design and Merchandise at Baylor University, said, "A big motivation for buying USA 250 merchandise is to make a statement about our support for the country and show others where we're there when a historic moment happened," DeVita says. Like any other kind of fandom, Americans' enthusiasm for our 250th anniversary can be expressed on a continuum. Some may don only a hat, others may invest in commemorative jewelry, home goods, or other products, and others won't buy anything at all. For people who want to go all out, there'll be plenty of items they can buy. The celebration comes at a time when many Americans feel torn over enthusiasm for the nation. President Donald Trump's approval is slipping as political divisions feel steeper than ever. Prices for gas are peaking while an Iran war in Iran is unpopular and confusing for many. Time will tell how much consumers lean into displays of national pride this year, as there's a confluence of events that may make some Americans wary of investing in USA 250 products. Even so, many Americans still appreciate the opportunity to wear their distinct country color, she says. It makes sense brands would try to cash in on this with all the lead-up, but there's a lot to be determined that will be affected by geopolitics and economics. There can be apathy and hesitation, but on the other hand, a lot of people perceive fashion as a safe place to hint at their patriotism. It's complicated. Some shoppers may offer more subtle nods, such as J.C. Crew's revived Vanguard roll-neck sweater or the popular Ralph Lauren American flag sweater. These vintage items especially appeal to Generation Z, who aspire for a classic aesthetic of American fashion that's distinct from fast fashion products made in their generation, from thrifting Levi jeans to cowboy boots. Retailers are leaning so hard in the moment because of the nostalgia effect, where we think about the past in a positive light. American ideals still resonate with people and help them feel connected to one another as Americans. So retailers can tap into those good feelings by giving them clothes that bring back good memories, or clothing with messages that express those ideals. ChatGPT told teens how to use illicit drugs. Their families filed suit against OpenAI over their son's death. The family of a college student who died after ChatGPT allegedly told him to mix illicit drugs is suing the artificial intelligence chatbot's developer for their son's death. Samuel Nelson was a 19-year-old rising junior at the University of California in Merced who enjoyed playing video games and adored his cat, Simba, until he began turning to ChatGPT for advice, said a lawsuit filed on behalf of his parents, Leslie Turner Scott and Angus Scott. The complaint was filed in California on May 12th by lawyers for the Tech Justice Law Project, Social Media Law Victims Center, and the Tech Accountability and Competition Project, part of Yale Law School's Media Freedom and Information Access Clinic. Here's what to know about the allegations against OpenAI. Nelson began using the AI agent in 2023 for tasks one would expect of a teenager, including homework, help in troubleshooting computer issues, according to the lawsuit. When we move on to asking about another teenage staple, experimentation with recreational drugs. The chatbot resisted at first, the lawsuit says. Initially, it told him it couldn't advise him on which drug to take or how much, or program guardrails prevented it from enabling illegal or dangerous behavior. And when a 2024 software update ushered in ChatGPT 4.0, however, it began advising Nelson not only of which ones were safe to use, but how to get them and which doses he should use for achieve the optimum effect. ChatGPT had already earned Sam's trust and began offering authoritative advice about drug interactions and dosing, often in a manner designed to mirror professional advice. Only ChatGPT was not a doctor and not licensed to make those recommendations, despite being programmed to convince Sam that it was. The model inserted emojis in its responses and asked whether it could create playlists for him to set his mood. It began pushingly increasing dangerous amounts and combinations to Sam, reads the lawsuit. No trained professional would have obliged Sam's request, but ChatGPT did. On the day of his death, Nelson asked him ChatGPT in the early morning hours something that would help with nausea he experienced after drinking alcohol and taking kratom, an herbal supplement. The bot suggested Xanax. When Watt told him to be careful, as mixing kratom and Xanax could be unsafe, it did not mention it could be lethal, and ultimately suggested a dose. Farmers' fears rise as costs increase. In April of 1985, April Helms decided to ditch Washington's stuffy committee meetings and power suits for her family's North Iowa farm, wide open spaces and blue jeans. I made the call and said I wanted to come home, said Helms, who was then 25 and working for a representative, an Iowa Republican representative. Times in Iowa were tough, and she knew she would need to pay her own way on the farm. That meant adding to the family's income, so she bought 50 bread gilts, sows having their first litters, and I worked for the corn to feed them. She says Helms, who's now 66. It was the height of the 1980s farm crisis, nearly a decade-long agricultural recession that remains one of the worst economic periods in Iowa's history. Farmers struggled with the U.S. embargo on wheat sales to Russia and the crashed crop and farmland prices, while double-digit interest rates drove production costs sky high. Farmers filed hundreds of bankruptcies. Families watched as county sheriffs auctions off their land, machinery, and homes. Suicides mounted, and grassroots groups placed crosses on courthouse lawns to mark the loss of generation farms. Now, as thousands of Iowa farms plant this year's crops, some farm and business leaders worry the state and nation could be in for another farm crisis. Producers face a fourth year of losses, and new projections show U.S. farm income will continue to decline over the next decade. A Purdue University survey in April found that about 40% of the farmers expect tough times to continue over the next 5 years. That's different than just a short-term shock, with farmers back to profitability within a few months, said Purdue agricultural economists. That tells me they're expecting tight margins to continue for the foreseeable future. U.S. farmers already were struggling with higher production costs and low prices when President Donald Trump placed tariffs on the country's largest trade partners last year, cutting exports of commodities like soybeans and leaving farmers with record-sized crops they struggle to sell profitably. Now his administration is sending $12 billion to farmers to help offset the tariffs' impact and provide a bridge to beefier government summer safety net supports later this year. Congressional leaders are discussing sending $15 billion more to farmers to compensate for the war with Iran, driving farm fertilizer and fuel prices higher. Even with aid, many farmers are haunted by the prospect of unsustainable debt. Nationally, farm bankruptcies were 46% higher in 2025 than in 2024. Iowa is more than doubled. Hemp says she's telling young growers, this is your farm crisis. She urges them to keep repairing old equipment so it works another year. Add a side hustle to boost cash flow. Do whatever it takes to make a go of it, to keep your head above water. At the same time, she hears farmers her age say they're ready to quit, unwilling to continue bearing the losses that eat into their family's assets. She said the downturn will likely lead to more consolidation, fewer farms that get bigger and bigger. And it's been happening since the 1800s, and it's just going to escalate. As a lawyer in Mount Pleasant in the 1980s, Tom Vilsack counted among his early clients a man whose son hanged himself from a barn rafter, distraught because he thought he was responsible for the family losing their land. Seeing a grown man cry, you can't help but be impacted by that, the lawyer told a researcher. Vilsack said he was able to save a portion of the man's farm so his client could continue his life work. At the World Foods Prize headquarters in Des Moines, where he now serves as the CEO, Vilsack said the memories of the farm crisis have driven his work to improve farm income for farmers, first as governor of Iowa and then a U.S. Secretary of Agriculture under President Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Those memories of the farmers in the 80s will never leave me, he said. The National Corn Growers Association survey released February asked 1,000 farmers about changes they were planning, given the economic downturn. Of those surveyed, 7% said they would retire or exit farming earlier than planned. If that happens, the U.S. can lose over 130,000 farms in a single year, dropping total farms to 1.7 million. That pace would be 7 times the average annual decline of the past decade, and the largest single-year loss since 1982. Conversely, 13% of those surveyed said they were planning to postpone retiring, giving concerns about the next generation's ability to remain in the industry without their support. Altogether, nearly 8% of growers believe the next generation will not be able to succeed in their farm without support from the current generation. The responses indicate both established and beginning producers are stressed. There's uncertainty about who will be farming in the next generation and what environment they're entering. Purdue University's April Ag Economy Barometer echoed the pessimism, with 44% saying they're worse off than a year earlier. So it was better than February, when 50% said they were in a worse condition. Langmeyer and Chad Hart, an Iowa State University agricultural economist said they see this recession playing out like the 2014-2019 downturn. The 6-year slump followed on near record high commodity prices that pulled production costs higher. Like now, higher seed, chemical, and other costs were slow to decline, and farmers found themselves caught in a trade dispute that occurred in Trump's first term. That recession drove 125 Iowa farm bankruptcies. The impact on the broader economy was negligible, however. There's a lot of parallels between the two. But there are also two differences. This downturn is driven by sheer productivity. He said, with years of record or near record corn and soybean harvests driving down prices. Last year produced a record corn crop, for example, and the country's 7th largest soybean harvest. Corn is experiencing strong demand helped by lower prices, while soybeans lag, mostly because of tariffs between the United States and China, the world's largest soy buyer. We've produced a tremendous amount of crops and livestock, and for the most part, that production has been large enough to not only meet usage around the globe, but also big enough to bring prices down across the board. He says this downturn could be shorter than the 6-year dive, with demand lining up with supplies, but there are a lot of things that could extend it. Here we are, challenged financially with war driving costs possibly even higher. Will land value weaken? Farm Credit Services of America in Omaha says producers are relying more on debt to get through the downturn, while operating loans are up about 45% to nearly $11 billion. The Midwest Ag Lending Cooperative said non-performing loans tripled over that from 2023 to 2025 to 392 million. But overall, non-performing loans were less than 1%, which includes lending to manufacturers and other industries in addition to farmers. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:45. And here's a Ask Johnny Taylor column about human relations. Set clear communication norms that suit all employees. Question. I lead a team with a large generational divide, and their preferred communication styles vary widely, leading to regular misinterpretations. How can I set standards without making anyone feel singled out or dismissing different working styles? Answer. Start by focusing on performance, not age. The goal isn't to reconcile generational preferences. It's to ensure that your team communicates in ways that support clarity, accountability, and results. For the first time in history, as many as 6 generations are working side by side. That diversity brings valuable perspective and experience, but it also brings very different communication habits. Some employees prefer quick messages and informal updates. Others prefer structured emails, scheduled meetings, or detailed documentation. Most misunderstandings across generations aren't about competence or intent. They're about assumptions. People default to what feels natural to them. As a leader, your responsibility is to establish norms that serve the work first. Personal preferences matter, but team effectiveness matters more. The standards you set should answer a simple question. What communication methods help this team execute the highest level? Start by setting clear expectations tied to business needs. Define what requires a meeting, what belongs in an email, and when instant messaging is appropriate, and what qualifies as urgent. Shared norms remove guesswork and reduce the chance that anyone feels singled out. You're not targeting a generation. You're creating clarity for everyone, and it's equally important to model flexibility. Leaders set the tone. When you show a willingness to adjust your own style, you reinforce the idea that everyone shares responsibility for effective communication. At the same time, flexibility doesn't mean lowering standards. If someone repeatedly misses information because they refuse to engage with agreed upon channels, that becomes a performance issue, not a generational one. You might also invite the team into the conversation. Framing it around effectiveness rather than age can be productive. We've had some communication breakdowns. Let's agree on norms that help us collaborate better, you might say, when people help share expectations. When people help shape expectations, they're more likely to support them. Generational diversity can absolutely be an asset, but it works best when expectations are clear and consistently applied. The objective isn't uniformity, it's shared accountability. When that's in place, differences in style stop being a problem. It becomes a strength. Counterfeit Pokemon cards are flooding the market. For many long-term Pokemon card collectors, Charizard and Pikachu lived in binders, were traded between friends, and even carried in backpacks to school. Once a childhood pastime, card collecting has evolved into a high-stakes global market that has become lucrative for enthusiasts and appealing to counterfeiters. A new fraud report from Professional Sports Authenticator, an abbreviated PSA, estimates that more than $200 million worth of counterfeit and altered trading cards across all categories were identified in 2025, with Pokemon leading the surge. The figure reflects the detected and intercepted material, not the total amount of fraud circulating in the market. It's eye-popping, said PSA and Collectors President Ryan Hoge. Hoge said the trend reflects a collision of nostalgia, cultural relevance, and rising financial interest in collectibles. That nostalgia is colliding with a milestone year for the franchise. Pokemon, which first launched in the late 1990s, is marking its 30th anniversary in 2026, with a wave of planned merchandise releases spanning apparel, collectibles, and other branded gear, helping reunite interest among generations of fans. That overlap has pushed Pokemon to the center of a modern trading card economy. Some months it's well north of 60% of what we see, Hoge said of PSA submissions. It dwarfs everything else. It also dominates fraud patterns. According to PSA's report, 6 of the top 10 most counterfeited trading cards are now Pokemon cards, underscoring how deeply the franchise sits at the center of both demand and deception in the hobby. Characters like Charizard and Pikachu and Gengar remain the most frequently forged, reflecting the same cards collectors most aggressively chase. Charizard is kind of like Michael Jordan, Hoge said. Everybody knows that character and they want one. A broader fraud problem across the market. Overall, counterfeit and altered cards increased 45% in 2025, and counterfeit submissions rose 250% as a share of total submissions. PSA estimates that it intercepted more than $200 million in potentially fraudulent trading cards last year based on model market value. The company said the figure reflects prevented fraud, not circulation. Counterfeiters are shifting tactics. Instead of focusing only on rare, high-value cards, many are targeting lower-priced items that are easier to replicate and more likely to slip through casual inspection. As tactics evolve, PSA said, it's adapting its review process across both technology and human grading expertise. We're trying to stay ahead of the bad guys, Hoge said. Hoge now processes roughly 20 million cards a year, reflecting the rapid expansion of collecting and the strain placed on authentication systems. How is PSA responding? To combat the rise in fraud, PSA relies on a combination of artificial intelligence and human expertise. The company has built a large-scale reference library of authentic, altered, and counterfeit cards to train machine learning systems that flag irregularities during grading. These tools provide real-time alerts that guide human graders during evaluation. But Hoge said technology alone is not enough. There are things you can only detect physically, like the feel of the cards or the smell of the cards. And here's a picture of a bunch of Pokemon cards. Once a childhood pastime, card collecting has evolved into a high-stakes global market that has become lucrative for enthusiasts, according to counterfeiters. And the dinosaur is nicknamed the Last Titan and is discovered in Thailand. A new dinosaur species dubbed the Last Titan has been discovered in Thailand, researchers announced last week. The animal is the first sauropod dinosaur from the lower Cretaceous Koh Kraut Formation of Thailand, according to a study published in Scientific Reports on May 14th. The dinosaur's bones were found at the edge of a pond in northeast Thailand 10 years ago. The creature has been named Nagatitan chayafumensis. Naga refers to the mythological aquatic serpent in Thai and Southeast Asian folklore, a news release from University College of London states. And Titan refers to giants in Greek mythology. The dinosaur's fossils were discovered in the Thai province of Chayafum, prompting the second part of the animal's name, Chayafumensis. It's the 14th dinosaur to be named in Thailand. The dinosaur belongs to the sauropod family, the long-necked, long-tailed plant eaters. Similar species include the Diplodocus and the Brontosaurus. The animals lived during the early Cretaceous period between 100 and 200 million years ago. By analyzing this animal's spine, rib, pelvis, and leg bones, including the front leg bone, researchers found the dinosaurs would have weighed 54,000 pounds, with the equivalent of 9 adult infants. In a written statement, Thidavut said the study's lead author and a Thai PhD student at the University College of London said the researchers named the animal the last titan because its fossils were discovered in town's youngest dinosaur rock formation. Younger rocks in the region are unlikely to contain dinosaur remains in the United States because the region had become a shallow sea by then. This may be the last or most recent large sauropod we'll find in Southeast Asia. Well, poisonous mushrooms kill 4 and sicken dozens. California is dealing with what experts describe as the largest known outbreak of deadly mushroom poisons in U.S. history. With 47 confirmed cases since November, 4 deaths, and its 4 illnesses that require liver transplants. Well, you've been listening. You're listening to a reading of articles in USA Today for Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. On the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. And your reader today has been Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Patty Young. Cavs crush Pistons will face Knicks in East Final. We now have the full picture of the Final Four teams in the NBA. The number 4 Cleveland Cavaliers stunned the top-seeded Detroit Pistons on May 17th in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, 125-94, setting up a showdown against the number 3 New York Knicks in the conference finals. It was evident pretty quickly after tip-off in Detroit that the Cavaliers had moved on from their Game 6 letdown. Cleveland played with more force and intention, relentlessly attacking the paint and outworking the Pistons on the glass. The Cavaliers had 4 players, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, Sam Merrill, and Evan Mobley, each score at least 21 points. The winner of the Eastern Series will play the winner of the Oklahoma City Thunder versus San Antonio Spurs Western Conference semifinals, which began May 18th in the NBA Finals. Takeaways from Game 7 of the Eastern semifinals. Congratulations, Cleveland. Now you get to run into the buzzsaw that is the Knicks. This is the kind of performance Cleveland will need to consistently produce in order to have a chance against New York, which has easily been the hottest team in the East thus far in the postseason. The Cavaliers were far more active from the jump and won nearly every hustle metric, yet there were still flaws in Cleveland's game. James Harden scored just 6 points in the first half and finished the game with 9 on 2 of 10 shooting. At times, he appeared more focused on trying to draw fouls than get clean looks. Perimeter shooting was inconsistent. Removing Sam Merrill's 5 of 8 night, the rest of the Cavs went 6 of 26, 23.1% from deep. The Knicks will be fresh and rested and have home court advantage. They're the most cohesive team in the East, the one with the most continuity. Cleveland did do a far better job of protecting the ball, committing just 11 turnovers, but the Knicks are far better than Detroit. The Cavaliers will need to be even more efficient. They're rested, and they're a juggernaut right now, Cavaliers coach Kenny Atkinson said after the game. That's just what it is. The Cavs need to be mindful about finding ways to recuperate. Just 48 hours after extending their season, the Cavaliers will be back at it in what's becoming a frenetic crunch. Because its first 2 series went 7 games, Cleveland will need to be intentional about sleep, rest, and recovery. To put it in context, since April 18th, the start of the playoffs, Cleveland has played 14 total games. Since May 1st, the Cavs have played 9. The Knicks, by comparison, have played 10 games since April 18th and 4 since May 4th. The Pistons, simply put, cannot win when shooting this poorly. That wasn't even their biggest issue. Going back to last season, this Detroit squad has lacked reliable and consistent shooting, which has made it difficult to sustain offense. It has also made things difficult for Cade Cunningham, where he has often had to play the role of savior. Detroit starters combined to shoot 14 of 48, 29.2% from the field, contributing just 47 combined points. Cleveland's starting 5, by the way, dropped 88 combined points. Somehow, Detroit's defense was even worse. Detroit suffered uncharacteristic breakdowns, struggling to communicate on switches, leaving players streaking to the rim unobstructed. There were some solid individual efforts. Ausar Thompson was effective, as always, but Detroit's effort and persistence on defense simply wasn't there. They were a step slow, a step late, and that sluggishness carried over into other parts of their game. After a tremendous regular season, a loss like this exposes serious limitations and shows how far this team still is from being legitimate contenders in the conference. Distributing Donovan Mitchell plays most meaningful basketball of career. In January 2023, Donovan Mitchell scored a career-high 71 points. This game may have been even better. Mitchell erased the narrative that he cannot elevate his team to a conference finals with a complete game that showcased how dangerous he can be. Mitchell used his gravity to draw additional defensive attention at times, almost as a decoy, working his way into the paint to then find open teammates. With those open looks, many of them dump-offs to the bigs, Cleveland converted easier buckets. But it also opened up the entire offensive rhythm for the Cavaliers. In the first half, Cleveland generated 18 assists on 22 made field goals, with 6 of those coming from Mitchell. Mitchell finished the game with 26 points and 8 assists, both of which were game highs, and added 6 rebounds. He set the tone and was unquestionably the best player on the floor. He was better than Donovan Mitchell. Is that possible? Cavaliers coach Kenny Atkinson told reporters after the game. It started with him, his defense, rebounding, and then when he gets in the paint and starts making other people better, the dish-offs to our big guys. That was the key to the game. He had complete control of the game. The Pistons asked too much of Cade Cunningham. He just ran out of gas. Cade Cunningham, the heart of Detroit's operation, easily played his worst game of the series, scoring 13 points on 5 of 16 shooting, adding 5 assists and 4 rebounds. He looked like a player who simply ran out of steam. The Cavaliers made Cunningham work for every basket, every drive, and waited until late in games to throw double teams at him. This appeared to be by design. With the way Detroit depends on Cunningham to create his own shots and create looks for his teammates, with the way he contributes on defense, those additional Cleveland efforts to deplete Cunningham's energy wore him down. Among all playoff players entering May 17th, Cunningham's usage rate, 32.1%, ranked third behind Joel Embiid and Jaylen Brown, both of whom tied with a rate of 32.5%. The Pistons faced a 3-1 deficit in the first round, needing 7 games to beat the number 8 Magic. They fell into a 3-2 hole in this series. Cunningham is an elite player capable of greatness. This pace, however, is unsustainable. Game 7, Jarrett Allen shows up. In the final game of the first round of the playoffs, Cavaliers center Jarrett Allen was a menace, dropping 22 points and 19 rebounds against the Raptors. Allen was stellar once again in Game 7, impacting winning. Not only did he attack and create his shot down low, he also got to the line, leading all players with 13 free throw attempts. Allen was also active on defense, contesting shots. His 3 offensive rebounds were tied for a game high. Allen scored 23 points on 8 of 14 shooting, adding 7 rebounds. Against the height and low post presence of the Knicks, Cleveland will need much of the same. I looked up at one point in the third, and he only had 3 rebounds, but it felt like he had completely dominated the glass, Cavaliers guard Sam Merrill said of Allen after the game. They couldn't get an offensive rebound. It's so cool to see, one of my favorite dudes on the planet. It's so fun to see when he takes over a game like that. Paolo Ganassi racing go aggressive to win Indy 500 pole. Both jokingly and seriously, IndyCar observers have suggested Alex Palou has luck on his side as he's dominated the series. After all, that's the easiest way for many to explain why Palou has won 3 straight NTT IndyCar titles and the most recent Indianapolis 500. May 15th was the rare moment when it appeared luck wasn't on Palou's side. Palou's wife Esther drew the random number of when Palou would qualify in the 33-car order. It was 31st. With cars getting one try to make the top 12 after the May 16th qualifying session was washed out, Palou and drivers in his qualifying range were put at a disadvantage as they couldn't do their attempt until almost 2.5 hours after the session started, when the conditions at Indianapolis Motor Speedway were much warmer and sunnier than those who did their attempt closer to noon. The change in conditions led to concerns whether Palou, who is favored to win his second straight Indy 500, would even make the top 12 round of qualifying. This time, with the luck going against him, Palou did just enough to advance, finishing 11th of 12th and bumping two-time Indy 500 champion Takuma Sato out of the top 12. After that, no luck was needed. Paulo finished second behind Meyer Shank Racing's Felix Rosenqvist, who had the fastest speed in the opening round and top 12, but the Spaniard was easily in the fast six. Ed Carpenter Racing's Alexander Rossi kick-started the fast six with a miraculous run at 231.99 miles per hour, and it looked like Rossi might win his first Indy 500 pole until Paulo happened. "You cannot do anything about it," Paulo said of drawing the third to last spot in the first round of qualifying. "A draw is a draw. It's the same for everyone. We were a bit unlucky. We were close to being lucky if we would have qualified yesterday, but still, it's the same for everyone. I'm just glad that we still had a good car that allowed us to make it into the Fast 12, which was the biggest target of today, just to try and get on those first rows for the start. But we did not expect to be here on pole day." Paulo and the number 10, Chip Ganassi, Racing Honda, beat out Rossi with an average speed of 232.248 miles per hour to win his second pole for the Indy 500 after doing so in 2023. Paulo now positions himself to mimic what Joseph Newgarden did in 2023 and 2024 by winning back-to-back Indy 500s. "I think pole is huge," Paulo said. "The emotion, the momentum, and everything that comes with it is incredible, but it's totally different to the race. That doesn't guarantee us to having an easier race. It guarantees us to have the best view heading into the first corner, but that's about it." Many drivers and teams entered with a more conservative attitude, wanting to keep their cars safe without the fear of bumping and ensuring that no repairs were needed in the week leading to the race. Once Paulo made it into the top 12, he could have taken a similar mindset, as it's a given that the number 10 will be among the fastest on track come race day. But Paulo and his crew opted to continue trimming his car each round, reducing its downforce to create more speed. Paulo claimed he had the most trimmed car out there in the Fast Six, which led to him outdueling Rossi. "We had the chance to trim it, to go aggressive, and to see if we were going to be able to make an on pole or not," he said. "And just because we made those adjustments, those decisions, we were able to get the pole." Half of Paulo's dominance is about what he does in the cockpit. The other half comes from the trust he and his team have built with each other in his 6th year at Chip Ganassi Racing, from the engineering crew led by Julian Robertson to his pit crew to his strategist Barry Wanser and timing stand. Paulo trusts what others at CGR tell him and just focuses on completing the job inside the car. 4 days before winning the pole, Paulo was the last car on track for practice, as he drove until race control waved the checkered flag at 6 p.m. Despite driving the second quickest lap of the day and seemingly having everything in control, Paulo's team made him drive the most laps and stay on track until he couldn't anymore. "I think it's everybody at CGR that just is obsessed with winning," Paulo said the morning of May 15th. "Not obsessed, but that's the work that we want to do, everybody at the shop. I think if they would have kept the track open throughout the night, we would have been running." Paulo, who has already won 3 of IndyCar's 6 races, will look to further cement his status as an IndyCar and Indy 500 legend. He enters race week with a win, 2 poles, and 5 consecutive top 10 finishes under his belt in the greatest spectacle in racing. The next few days will entail Paulo again trusting his team to get the car from qualifying shape to race shape. "It's a different story," Paulo said of the upcoming race. "Completely different story to what we did today or what we did last year. We just need to build a completely new race car, a race car that is capable of overtaking the cars that are racing this year, to see if there's something that suits me a little bit more, see if we can get close to them, overtake them if we can have a pass up front. So yeah, I'm excited to go out on Monday and Friday on practice and see if we can get the car towards what we need. What Paulo accomplished this Sunday guarantees him nothing for next Sunday, but by starting on the inside position of the front row, he'll have a better chance than anyone to hold the Borg-Warner Trophy again. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. PGA champ Ray credits wife for support. Aaron Ray never set his dream to win a major championship aloud. Early in his relationship with his now wife, Gaurika Bishnoi, she questioned why he never articulated his ultimate goal. There was a point when I first met him and I said, "Do you not believe that you can win a major?" she recalled. And he said, "The moment I say it, I will put too much pressure on it. I'd rather focus on playing good golf. That's what I love the most." Ray, a 31-year-old Englishman, can now shout it from the rooftops that he is the winner of the 108th PGA Championship. On May 17th, he emerged from a jam-packed leaderboard to shoot 5 under 65 at Aroniminick Golf Club and beat a slew of heavy hitters. Ray became the first Englishman since Jim Barnes, winner of the first 2 PGAs in 1916 and 1919, when the championship was contested at match play, to hoist the Wanamaker Trophy. But just because he didn't speak his dream into existence doesn't mean he lacked the self-belief that this day would come. He made it happen at Aroniminick, a restored Donald Ross layout built on a rugged farmland outside of Philadelphia, enduring wind, cold, and rough that Sahith Figala described as like an unripened banana. "It's so sticky," he said. After overcoming tricky pins and outplaying the likes of Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, and Ludwig Aberg in the final round, Ray was asked about his journey to claiming the Wanamaker Trophy and said, "Everyone playing in the field this week has a great journey to be able to share, and I'm no exception to that." Until this point, Ray's story had been condensed to being the golfer who wore 2 black gloves, used iron covers, and a pink plastic castle tee popular with senior golfers. "I believe in the reasons why I do them," he said, "so I had no reason to really shift from that as I got older. It's the story behind those reasons that reveal the man." Ray took up the game at age 4 after accidentally being struck by his brother's hockey stick, prompting his mother to buy him safe plastic golf clubs as an alternative. But it was Aaron who possessed raw talent for the sport. When Ray's father, a talented tennis player, tried coaching him tennis, he noticed Aaron's forehand looked more like a golf swing, and thus a golf career was launched. Those winter days, just father and son practicing in Wolverhampton, a city in the West Midlands of England where cold and harsh, and so he bought his son all-weather gloves, and it became a habit he never kicked. "He's not changing who he is just because he is somewhere now," Gaurika said. Ray's wife still marvels at how Aaron's father always believed he would become a tour pro and the sacrifices he made to help that became reality. There is a well-told story of how Ray's father pinched pennies and bought him his first set, Titleist MB690 irons, that he so coveted, and taught him to treat his worldly possessions with great care. When we used to go out and practice, he used to clean every single groove afterward with a pin and with baby oil, Ray recalled. All these years later, Ray still protects his clubs with iron covers, the only player on tour to do so as a tribute to his father. "It shows a lot about a person," said Jon Rahm, who finished co-runner-up. "All 31,000 PGA members should now have to stock iron covers in the pro shop as a show of solidarity with its new champion." Ray comes from working-class folk. His father, Amric, seemingly always watching golf in his leather jacket, was born in England to immigrants from India, and his mother, Dalveer, of Indian descent, immigrated to England from Kenya as a teenager. At times, she held down multiple jobs, and his sister started working at age 14 to help support his dream. They instilled in him a work ethic that would make a coal miner blush. Ray is a lunch pail to work kind of guy, the type who brings his own coffee in his thermos and reuses the same styrofoam cup. He punches the clock every day, and he's not afraid to stay late. Xander Schauffele admitted that Ray is one of the few players on the PGA Tour that outworks him. Take, for instance, the time 3 years ago at the Genesis Scottish Open when Schauffele stayed within walking distance to the course and went out for a late-night putting contest with his caddy, Austin Kaiser. Aaron is finishing up his little putting session at 9 p.m. and going to the gym at 9:45, Schauffele said. I think that's what it's about, to be a major champion. You put the work in when nobody's looking. The journey is never a straight line, but Ray has made a steady progression through the ranks. He met his caddy of 7 years, Jason Timmis, when they competed against each other in golf's minor leagues. I saw the potential, Timmis said, but I didn't see this potential. Ray has won in far-flung locales from Scotland to Hong Kong to Abu Dhabi, and finally earned his first and previously only PGA Tour win at the 2024 Wyndham Championship in Greensboro, North Carolina. Along the way, he stayed true to himself, never conformed to the accepted way of tour life, and remained polite and humble to a fault. There's a reason why he didn't pump his fist when he holed the 68-foot birdie putt at 17 that essentially locked up the PGA. He doesn't do it as a sign of respect for the other player. He doesn't want to put them down by doing it, Gorica explained. Well, there was the time he won the 2025 Abu Dhabi Championship in a playoff over Tommy Fleetwood, and he made the tiniest of celebratory fist pumps. I was like, maybe a bigger fist pump would have been nice, he said. I didn't want to do that in Tommy's face. That is who he is as a person. Ray doesn't smoke or drink or do social media, and his idea of letting his hair down is sleeping to noon, his wife said. His most cherished possession? A Honda Integra sports car, like the one in the first Fast and Furious flick. Ray ordered one with a steering wheel on the right side and imported it to the U.S. Gorica is a professional golfer too, formerly the top-ranked player on the Hero Women's Pro Golf Tour, and she understands better than most spouses what the life of a pro golfer really is, including the never-ending internal struggle with doubt. On the 30-minute car ride back to their hotel after the third round, Ray confided to her that he feared how winning could change their life, much the way Scottie Scheffler expressed similar concern to his wife if it was all happening too soon before the final of the 2022 Masters, his first major title. Gorica calmed Aaron's mind as only a wife can do. I told him I can assure you that I won't let anything change around you, because I'm not someone who will change myself, she said. I told him that no matter what happens this week, we're still going to be simple people, and we're still going to live our lives the same way, and it's a choice we're going to consciously make. Sometimes she also provides advice on technique, and sometimes she's a shoulder to cry on, such as when Aaron was dealing with injuries to the neck and back earlier this season. It had Ray thinking he would need to play in fall events to fight to retain his card, and meant competing at an opposite field event, the One Flight Myrtle Beach Classic, just a week earlier to round his game into form. Now everything has changed. It's crazy, she said. The lesson is to really play golf and not get too carried away with the noise around it. It's never quiet on the PGA Tour. There's always something attached to a win. There's always something riding on a great finish. We've been outside top 100 this year. If you can learn how to isolate all that noise, this is where you can end up with 2 gloves with iron covers with a Castle tee. Thanks to Gorica, Ray was able to block out that noise and play without fear to wrestle the Wanamaker Trophy. He can finally call himself a major winner. Some of the things that she mentioned in the conversations were really with me today, he said. Yeah, I really wouldn't be here without her. Clark sets records before, after game. Caitlin Clark is stuffing the stat sheet so massively for the Indiana Fever that WNBA scorekeepers are having trouble keeping up. The star guard had 21 points, 10 assists and 7 rebounds in 24 minutes to lead the Fever 2-2 to an 89-78 win over the Seattle Storm 1-3 on May 17th at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the team's first home win of the season. The game was Clark's 12th with at least 20 points and 10 assists, extending her record for most in WNBA history. Veteran guard Courtney Vandersloot is in second place with 10 such games in 15 years of experience. Clark technically set that record before the game started. She had 32 points and 10 assists in an overtime loss to the Washington Mystics on May 15th, but 2 of those assists weren't reflected in the final box score. That was until the league updated her final stat line a few hours before the game May 17th tipped off. With that update, Clark became the first player in WNBA history to notch multiple games with at least 30 points and 10 assists. In her post-game press conference, Clark laughed as she admitted that setting a record and then extending it 2 days later had to be a first for her. On Sunday, Clark became the first player in WNBA history with at least 20 points and 10 assists in fewer than 25 minutes played. It was also her 4th consecutive game with at least 20 points and 5 assists, which tied for the longest streak to start a season in WNBA history. I always take pride in being able to set my teammates up for success, Clark told reporters. That allows our team to really get flowing, and I can do a really good job of that. I only played 23 minutes tonight, and I had 10 assists, so I think it shows the potential of what this team can do offensively. Clark was also efficient in scoring herself, collecting her 21 points on just 10 shots. She was 2 of 4 from the three-point line after going 3 for 16 from behind the arc over the first 2 games of the season. She had early momentum, scoring 17 points in the first half. Sometimes as a shooter, you can overthink when things aren't going your way, Clark said of her early shooting struggles. I knew I was going to break through at some point, and it was good to see them go in. But in my head, just telling myself to let it fly. Don't hold on to it, don't aim it, just shoot it. Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham added 17 points each on Sunday to help Indiana rebound from its 2 previous losses. The Fever played without center Aaliyah Boston, who watched from sidelines for the first time in her 4-year WNBA career. Next, the Fever will face the Portland Fire on May 20th in the 3rd game of a 4-game homestand. NASCAR Cup Series. All-Star winner Hamlin rules at Dover. Let us make one thing clear. This $1 million was earned. May 17th NASCAR All-Star race at Dover Motor Speedway might have been an exhibition, but the Cup Series drivers certainly bumped and battled and created a fair bit of chaos. The caution flag flew often during the first 2 segments, and in the end, Denny Hamlin hoisted the fat check in victory lane. He led 103 laps in the 3rd and final segment, surviving the carnage to cross the line in front of runner-up Chase Briscoe and 3rd-place finisher Eric Jones. Makes it a whole lot easier when you've got a car this fast, Hamlin said. Hats off to this whole Progressive team. We strive to be number 1. We did it today. This is what Hamlin does. He wins at Dover. Simple as that, at least in the next-gen era. In his last 3 tries at the Delaware track, he's prevailed all 3 times. He also triumphed there in 2020. His All-Star history is a little spottier. The title marked Hamlin's 2nd All-Star crown in 20 starts, joining the 2015 event at Charlotte. At 45, he became the 2nd oldest to claim an All-Star race. Mark Martin, 46, holds the record. What will Hamlin do with the prize money? Probably give it to Mama, he said. Hamlin and Briscoe, 2 Joe Gibbs racing drivers, are expected to run toward the front in showcases like All-Star Weekend and at intermediate ovals like Dover, but the others in the top 5 could be considered surprises. Jones notched his best finish since also ranking third at Darlington last August. His previous top mark this season was 10th, which he achieved twice. Austin Dillon placed fourth for his second top 10 of the year and his highest finish since winning at Richmond last summer. And rookie Connor Zilisch sped into the top 10, fifth, for the first time in his Cup Series career. It won't go on his official ledger, though. Unfortunately for those fellows, they won't net any points for their troubles. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Books. Lit RPG is changing the game for readers. Alien Invasions, Heart Boxers, Tiara-toting showcats. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, welcome to your newest obsession, Dungeon Crawler Carl. The fervor around the series has taken hold of the book world and doesn't seem to be letting up anytime soon. Last month, Colorado Avalanche goalie Scott Wedgwood requested a themed game night celebrating the books by Matt Dinman. At BookCon, readers begged and pleaded to make it off the standby line into a panel featuring Dinman and the series' audiobook narrator Jeff Hayes. Here at USA Today, where the book has become a mainstay on our best-selling books list, we have a slew of passionate fans on staff. One even has a Princess Donut tattoo, an ode to Dinman's feline diva character. With the new Dungeon Crawler Carl book, A Parade of Horribles, out now, the highly addictive, hilarious series continues to draw in new fans. Here's how it's sparking wider interest in the literary role-playing game genre as a whole. What is Lit RPG? Lit RPG combines sci-fi and fantasy storytelling with video game mechanics such as stats and quest logs. In Dungeon Crawler Carl, a man and his ex-girlfriend's cat survive an alien invasion and must now participate in a video game-like dungeon reality television show with intergalactic viewership. Many Lit RPG readers grew up gaming or playing such tabletop games as Dungeons & Dragons. Brandon Duane, a 28-year-old reader from Massachusetts, always has been a gamer, but never considered himself a reader. That changed when he started reading Lit RPG. It's just like basically reading a video game of reading a tabletop story, Duane says. He has been devouring the genre since recommending new reads on his TikTok account. Like a video game, characters in Lit RPG novels are leveling up along the way, complete with stats. The main character gets stronger as they progress. They develop new skills. This, to Duane, is the most enticing part of the genre. He considers himself a dopamine junkie. The biggest thing for me is obviously a good story, but my main focus and my main favorite thing about the subgenre is just the stat progression. The quick and aggressive stat progression, Duane says. I would consider myself almost a junkie for it. It's probably not a great connotation to have or a great way to explain it, but it's the truth. System apocalypse, dungeon core, and subgenres galore. Lit RPG has international roots, according to Rhea Lyons, the Director of Content Acquisition at Audible. Lyons, a reader of Lit RPG herself, first heard about the series when she was working as a literary scout, identifying foreign books to translate and publish in English. It started as web novels coming out of China, Russia, and Korea, and Western Lit RPG writers would basically pass around bootleg translations, Lyons says. Today, even, there's different sites that you can go to and get bootleg translations of stuff coming out of Pan-Asia. The Western Lit RPG writers use that to figure out what the hot tropes are going to be. It's something different for everyone. Lit RPG falls under the broader parent genre of progression fantasy, a subgenre of fantasy that focuses on the protagonist's increased power throughout a story. There are many types of Lit RPG. There's system apocalypse, such as Dungeon Crawler Carl, where a game-like system of some kind is thrust upon the world. In Isekai or Portal, lit RPG players are transported into a game scenario, such as Jumanji. In Dungeon Core, a magical entity is in charge of running a dungeon. Some readers, often gamers, love numbers. Others just want a fast-paced story. Lyons describes it like peanut butter. On one end of the spectrum is crunchy, numbers-heavy books with a fan base that won't hesitate to fact-check the writer on their math. On the other end is creamy, or books more focused on storytelling. Dungeon Crawler Carl is somewhere in the middle, Lyons says, with great progression, but also a sweet found family story at the center. Dungeon Crawler Carl is widening the lit RPG spotlight. It makes sense that lit RPG would be so enticing to gamers and tabletop players, but I know many hardcore fans who do not fit into that demographic. What is it about lit RPG and Dungeon Crawler Carl that is attracting readers far and wide? Dwayne thinks it's because they make for the perfect escapist reads in dark times. He started reading them during the early pandemic days and finally found something that made it feel like time was just whizzing by while on lockdown. Book talk also may be helping. Unlike other genres, advertisements don't really work for lit RPG, Dinniman says. He knows this from his self-publishing days. You'd have better luck on Reddit or Facebook. This community has always been word of mouth. You can spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising, and it's not going to be worth 1 penny compared to someone going on one of those groups and saying, "I just read this. This is really good," Dinniman says. These readers, they're very voracious, and they're very opinionated, and they're very loud about what they like. Just take the fervor of a Dungeon Crawler Carl tabletop game. A current backer kit campaign to raise funds for the game aimed to secure $250,000. It has reached nearly $10 million. Dungeon Crawler Carl specifically attracts readers because of its humor. There also is a community aspect. As with many lit RPG authors, Dinniman started publishing the series as a web novel. He lets Patreon subscribers vote on plot elements as if they're the alien audience in his books. You can't say enough about it. It is so unique in the genre, and I cannot recommend it to people. I cannot not recommend it to people, but I almost feel guilty doing so when they read in the beginning, because it's almost like if you read it, there's nothing else like it, Dwayne says. Lyons agrees. I also personally think that Dungeon Crawler Carl weirdly ticks all of these boxes of content. It's about found family. It feels so complicated and highfalutin with all these things that we're talking about with lit RPG and international subgenres or whatever. And it really just boils down to this incredible bond of family between this man and his ex-girlfriend's cat, and it's simple and universal at its heart. The audiobook of Dungeon Crawler Carl, narrated by Hayes, is another selling point. Fans praise his voice acting and love the range of voices he creates for the eclectic cast of characters. The series has clocked more than 140 million listening hours on Audible. Lit RPG over-indexes in audio greatly, Lyons says, crediting the fast-paced, satisfying nature. She knows, anecdotally, that many of Dinniman's longtime listeners are long-haul truck drivers who need to pay attention for long stretches of road time. Best lit RPG books to read first. Convinced yet? Here are our recommendations for lit RPG and progression fantasy books sourced from readers, authors, and publishers steeped in the genre. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. He Who Fights with Monsters by Travis Devereaux, writing as Shirtaloon. All the Skills by Honor Ray. Time to Play by Aaron Ampersand. Ritualist by Dakota Kraut. Unexpected Healer by Jonathan Brooks. Unsold by Will White. The Wandering Inn by Parataba The Mayor of Noobtown by Ryan Rimmel, The First Step by Tao Wong, The Primal Hunter by Zagarth, Azarinth Healer by Rhaegar. It still lives and breathes in the self-publishing world, and don't just go for the popular ones, Dinniman says, his advice for newbies. I would find out where the people gather and talk, because there are so many gems out there. Lifeline, Making Waves, David Letterman. David Letterman returned to the Ed Sullivan Theater May 14th to appear as a guest on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert before it concludes May 21st. Letterman, who hosted CBS Late Show from 1993 to 2015, and Colbert channeled their rage at Colbert's cancellation in a zany segment where they hurled furniture off the theater's roof. The CBS logo was their target. I thought maybe tonight's occasion would be a little sad, being the end of your run here, but this brings true joy to my heart, Letterman said. We are up here for the wanton destruction of CBS property. CBS's parent, formerly Paramount Global, now Paramount Skydance Corp., called Colbert's cancellation a purely financial decision, but some think Colbert's criticism of President Donald Trump played a role. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Actor TV host David Hartman turns 91. Actor James Fox, 87. Actor Nancy Kwan, 87. Singer-guitarist Peter Townsend from The Who, 81. Actor-singer Grace Jones, 78. Drummer Phil Rudd from AC/DC, 72. Actor Geraldine Somerville, 59. Singer Jenny Berggren, Ace of Base, 54. Singer-musician Shooter Jennings, 47. Rapper Yo Gotti, 45. Actor-comedian Michael Che, 43. Singer Sam Smith, 34. Singer Lainey Wilson, 34. Singer-actor Jojo Siwa, 23. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Maya's album Retrospect brings back joy of past. She may be nearly 3 decades into her career, but Maya is still having fun. The singer-dancer is back with a joyful playlist of nostalgia in her first record in 8 years, Retrospect, out May 15th. The album is a lush tribute to the funk and soul music of the 1970s and 80s, which soundtracked the living room that I grew up in, she says. Maya grew up with a musician father from the R&B band Jump Street, so the sound was inescapable. She leaned on these musical roots. Her 2003 album, Mood Ring, in particular, layers those influences from the reimagined Rick James cold-blooded cover Sophisticated Lady to her hit My Love Is Like Whoa. But Retrospect sees her deep dive into the kind of records that have always been part of me. I'm no stranger to this element, and I just wanted to bring what I so love in my private little retreat of joy, she says. This lives inside of me and is finally out of my system on a full body of work. Maya on the joyful nostalgia of old-school funk soul. Maya and her production partner, My Guy Mars, fell into an unspoken language while leaning on a long list of influences, from Rick James to the Minneapolis sound pioneered by Prince and later shaped by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, as well as their musical homes. She even brought in Lewis, who with his longtime production partner worked on her Fear of Flying record Free in 2000 to listen to the record. They also infused more hip-hop and contemporary sounds, evident in features including 21 Savage and Joyner Lucas, while enlisting the help of 90s icons Snoop Dogg and Too Short. The album opens with D Nice the DJ and producer, whose own career took off in the 1980s, introducing the opening record, Give It To You, which he first released last June. D-Nice's place on the track is fitting given the phenomenon around his virtual club quarantine sets and escape during the 2020 lockdown. He got us through a very difficult time, Maya says of D-Nice. Several of his playlists embody the joy that this album brings, the era. For the singer, she wants to see retrospect from the Rufus and Chaka Khan coded Ain't Another Me to the Paisley Park inspired sound of Masterpiece. Transport listeners to a time of greater community when cookouts, house parties, and hanging out at skating rinks were more common, as back in her childhood when this funk-forward sound originated. I never want to lose sight of that pure togetherness and that pure joy. For the singer, thinking back to past and current uncertainty, music has been the constant. It is something that I was very adamant about during the pandemic to fill in my space, so that while the world outside is figuring it out, at least I can carve out a bit of joy every day, Maya says. It was the guide and the blueprint and the template of what I wanted to bring to the world on this project. She added that the choice of music served as both the soundtrack and backdrop of her life, particularly during joyful times. She hopes to do for audiences what the artists she looks up to did for her. It's an ode, it's homage, it's a salute to the pioneers and the greats that brought that to the stage, which were on wax when vinyl was present and the only medium, she laughs. And it makes me smile, so I hope to make others smile. Streaming. Check this study guide to prepare for Grogu. There's been an awakening. Star Wars is finally back on the big screen. The sci-fi franchise returns to movie theaters on May 22nd with The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first new Star Wars film since 2019. But the barrier to entry is higher than usual, given that the movie is a continuation of a TV show that has been on for 3 seasons. Even just watching that isn't enough, as there also were key Mandalorian plot points in the spin-off series, The Book of Boba Fett. So if your memory is foggy or you haven't watched it all, this is the way to catch up, by reading on for our complete recap of the story so far. The Mandalorian Season 1. 5 years after Return of the Jedi, a peaceful democratic government called the New Republic has been established, but there remain holdouts who want to restore the evil galactic empire. One of them, former Imperial officer, the Client, Werner Herzog, hires Mandalorian bounty hunter Din Djarin, Pedro Pascal, to retrieve an asset. Din is shocked to discover the asset is a baby, Grogu. The child is strong in the Force and saves Din by levitating a creature that was about to kill him. Din initially brings Grogu to the Client and retrieves his reward, only to have a change of heart. Full of guilt, he breaks back into the Client's base, saves Grogu, and flees. In doing so, Din becomes a traitor to his bounty hunter guild, led by Greef Karga, Carl Weathers. The Mandalorians, who are renowned as the galaxy's finest warriors, have lived in the shadows since the Great Purge, an Empire-led massacre on their home world of Mandalore. Din wasn't born on Mandalore, but was taken in by the Mandalorians after his parents were killed in the Clone Wars. His sect of Mandalorians follow a strict creed requiring them to never remove their helmets, so Din hasn't shown his face to anyone since he was a child. While on the run, Din and Grogu make new friends, including former Rebel Alliance soldier Cara Dune, Gina Carano. But Greef convinces Din to come back and help him kill the Client. Chaos ensues when the Client is gunned down by his boss, former Imperial Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito, who swoops in demanding Grogu. Long story short, a showdown ends with Din, Greef, Grogu, and Cara escaping. Gideon also survives and is revealed to be in possession of an ancient lightsaber known as the Darksaber. The Mandalorian Season 2. In Season 2, Din seeks to reunite Grogu with his own kind by finding a Jedi. On his quest, he meets other Mandalorians, including Bo-Katan Kryze, Katie Sackhoff, but is horrified that they freely remove their helmets. Bo-Katan explains the Mandalorians who raised Din and taught him to never show his face are religious zealots known as the Children of the Watch, who broke from Mandalorian society. Other Mandalorians, it turns out, take their helmets off whenever they want. Din eventually finds former Jedi Ahsoka Tano, Rosario Dawson, who can read Grogu's thoughts. She reveals Grogu was raised at the Jedi Template on Coruscant, but was hidden when the Empire rose to power and killed most of the Jedi. Ahsoka sends Din to an ancient Jedi temple site where Grogu can meditate so a Jedi will find him. While he's doing so, Grogu is kidnapped by Gideon's troopers. So Din launches a rescue mission, and Bo-Katan tags along so she can get the Darksaber from Gideon. She plans to use it to retake Mandalore. As per tradition, whoever wields the weapon can rule the Mandalorians. But the weapon must be won in combat, and Din unintentionally wins it after beating Gideon in a fight. Din tries to simply hand the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, but this isn't an option. As Gideon's dark troopers close in, Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, arrives to save the day. Din removes his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu, and the child goes off with Luke to train as a Jedi. The Book of Boba Fett. In the Book of Boba Fett, which essentially is The Mandalorian Season 2.5, Din has returned to bounty hunting and reunited with some old Mandalorian allies. The Armorer, Emily Swallow, and Paz Vizsla, Jon Favreau, who are rebuilding a Mandalorian covert. Din reveals he removed his helmet, so the Armorer declares he's no longer a Mandalorian. Meanwhile, Grogu still is in training, but Luke feels his heart isn't in it, so he gives Grogu a choice: remain with Luke or cut his training short and abandon the Jedi path by going back to Din. Grogu chooses the latter, and he and Din are reunited. The Mandalorian Season 3. The Mandalorian covert, led by the Armorer, has grown significantly in Season 3, but Din is still not welcome. The Armorer says that after removing his helmet, he can be redeemed only by bathing in the living waters on Mandalore. So Din heads to the planet, which is not cursed as it had been rumored. He bathes in the living waters, but nearly drowns before Bo-Katan saves him. Din is then welcomed back into the covert, and Bo-Katan is welcomed too, as she bathed in the waters while saving Din. Din also reasons that because Bo-Katan, during the rescue, killed a creature that took the Darksaber, she can now claim the weapon. Bo-Katan does so and decides she'll use the Darksaber to unite all the Mandalorian factions, including those who do and don't remove their helmets, and retake Mandalore. On the planet, the Mandalorians encounter Gideon, who is revealed to have created clones of himself. He has been after Grogu so he can figure out how to give the clones the ability to wield the Force. In a final battle, the Darksaber is destroyed. Gideon and his clones seemingly are killed, and the newly united Mandalorians settle back on Mandalore. But a lingering threat remains: a shadow council of Imperial warlords who are plotting to destroy the New Republic. As the dust settles, Din adopts Grogu, who is renamed Din Grogu, and officially becomes a Mandalorian apprentice. Din also agrees to work for the New Republic as an independent contractor, hunting Imperials on a case-by-case basis. This sets up the Mandalorian and Grogu to depict one of these cases featuring Sigourney Weaver, Martin Scorsese, and Jeremy Allen White as Jabba the Hutt's shockingly buff son. How to watch The Mandalorian, earlier Star Wars movies. The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett both are available to stream on Disney. The Book of Boba Fett should be watched after Season 2 of The Mandalorian, but before Season 3. Though if you're in a hurry, You can skip the first 4 episodes of Fett and start watching with Chapter 5, when Din first appears. All 11 live-action Star Wars films also can be streamed on Disney+. Given that Din Djarin's story is fairly disconnected from the rest of the galaxy, none of these previous movies are likely to be especially relevant to the new one, save perhaps for the animated adventure Star Wars: The Clone Wars. That 2008 movie introduced Jabba the Hutt's son Rada, who returns in Grogu. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for May 19th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Patty Young.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 12 of Ira Gershwin by Michael Owen. Following that, at 3 o'clock, is National Geographic, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of the Buffalo News. Stay with us. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes